Welcome back to Director's Playbook, the podcast focused on helping funeral professionals build strong, sustainable businesses. Today, we're joined by Miki Tufto, Executive Director of the Minnesota Funeral Directors Association, someone who works closely with funeral homes at the state level every single day. Hi, Miki.
Hey, Paul. Great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, welcome to the podcast. So good to see you
Thank
again. It's
you.
been a little while.
Little bit. Yep. Sure has. Good to
I
see
love
you.
it. Well, do me a favor for the audience members who may not be aware of who you are. Can you give a little introduction, a little bit about your background? Would you mind?
Sure. Absolutely. Happy to. I started with the association in 2002. Was the director of meetings and communications at the time. Worked with the association until 2007, roughly, and then took some time off to do some other work ventures and have a couple kids. And at a point, was approached about coming back to work for the association, and I said absolutely. And now have been in the executive director role for 3 years. So it's been a
Congratulations.
long journey and a good journey. And
But the question is this, how did it go by so fast?
yeah,
What the heck?
exactly. Like, I'm still 30, right? Like, that's exactly, it hasn't been 24 years. So.
That's how I feel. Good for
Mhm.
you. Well, so what's new in the association world? Anything new you can share with us?
Oh, there's been, at least in our state, a lot of consolidation that has been happening. And I think I don't see it as a negative thing. I think it's just the way the future is going to be. And as ownership changes happen, um, that we're just seeing a lot of regional consolidators, even individual funeral homes, buying their local competitors, and some changes that way. And so we're just really looking at how we can continue to support, as those changes happen, and support those funeral homes and their staff. So
Yeah, it's interesting because we saw a wave of that in the 90s, and you may have heard about that or read
I
about it.
did. Yep, I heard
You're
about it.
you're much too young to have witnessed it
Oh,
firsthand.
thanks.
But so I thought that was the heyday. It was never going to be back. But I think today is even more active than it was then.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it definitely is, a lot of what our board talks about, and just planning for the future and what that looks like. And then also for our members, as they plan their futures, as well as they're looking to sell their business, or, not every funeral home has a legacy person to step in, to take things over. And what that looks like, for our members too, to
Well, it's
support
harder
them.
than ever to run a funeral home, isn't it? With all they
Yes.
have to think about, just the
Yes.
trends with the top line being uh, impacted by cremation and competition and such.
Yes.
And all that translates to what the funeral home's worth at the end of the day. So,
Hmm.
not to mention staffing challenges and such. So, there's a lot to be
Absolutely.
aware of.
Absolutely.
So,
Yes.
you have a unique vantage point from where you are because you're right at the intersection of funeral homes, regulation, and education and advocacy. So, from your perspective, what feels different about the profession right now compared to just a few years ago?
I definitely feel like, just even yesterday, I was at the University of Minnesota. Their mortuary science program had their new student orientation. And so for the group of students that are, just starting in the program and trying to feel their way, and they're allowed to ask kind of some anonymous questions of practitioners that are there. And I always learn a lot from every time I'm there. And the more you see demographically, how many women there are versus men, how there really is no legacy funeral directors or future funeral directors that are part of the program, as much as it used to be. Especially when I first started, there was probably 80% or maybe, a family member, of the funeral home ownership. So this has been different to hear about where their path has come from, and more of it's been a calling of where they've experienced death themselves, or gone to, somebody's, a relative's funeral, or just talking with their funeral director in their community. And or even the aptitude tests, they're still doing those. There's always a few that mention that, and are always kind of quiet about that. Oh yeah, I took a test and it said I should be a funeral director. And we're like, well, that's
They
great,
still do that.
because
I didn't know they did
they
that.
still do that. Yes. And so that definitely is, still, makes those students question as they're looking to see, okay, I think I am going to do this and I am going to move into this realm and get my education. So um, I think what I learn a lot from those these future funeral directors is looking ahead of like how can we support them and their generation as they're coming in working for a funeral home. I always make sure, which I'm sure after a full day of orientation, they're all like, "Oh my gosh, I've heard so much and I'm overwhelmed a little bit,"
It's a
which is
lot to
all
take in.
normal. Yeah, that I'm always like, "Hey, and if you have an entrepreneurial heart, you definitely could own a funeral home someday." And I'm sure they're all like, "I don't know what you're talking about, lady. Like, this is a lot, taking it all in." So, but I think that the more we have those conversations, and especially with funeral homes that are doing that in their communities, to talk about, you know, finding those potential funeral directors for the future is important. So,
Yeah, it makes me think about 'cause the consolidation wave does have an impact, but that also could create opportunities for other people who are entrepreneurial and want to start their own business and want to do
absolutely.
things differently. So, are you seeing some of that in Minnesota, or what's that like?
Surprisingly, I had a phone call just this week of
Hmm.
a new member of our association who is building a new establishment in Minnesota, and I would have never, if you would have asked me, yeah, even last year, even last week, do you think anyone would be opening a funeral home in these times? I would have said no, I don't think so. But there's definitely the conversation I had with this new owner was a lot of excitement within their community. So it's great to hear that. But then you still see the other side of things where there's maybe some funeral homes that are closing their doors or selling to their neighbors. So
Yeah,
yeah,
at least there are options for sure.
yes,
So,
for
did you
sure.
just come back from a conference? I guess for a national executives, is that right?
I did, yes. There's a group of us that get together of my colleagues from around different states. There's usually about 15 or so of us that get together, just depending on everybody's schedules, and also representatives from NFDA too. And it's just a really, I value that, especially in the past 3 years, because they have really guided me and supported me to think about things professionally and how I can better serve the association. Um, so that is a huge value, which I hope also from our members' perspective that they're feeling that too. That when they get together and how much they learn from each other and how important that is.
Yeah, we can touch on that here in a minute. I'd love to know if there are any nuggets you walked away from your meeting with other execs.
I think we are. Everyone around the country has different things, different challenges. Everybody, I think, has had something regulatory. I mean, I don't think that is escaping any state necessarily that they're working through. Um, Definitely, there's a focus with uh, educating consumers, either about the value of a funeral or about who funeral directors are and how they'll guide you through what you need and that you should take time and set aside time to be able to have those conversations with your local funeral home or maybe a couple funeral homes just to find your space. That definitely seems like is something that's coming to the forefront that we're realizing we want to is a big support for, at least in our state of Minnesota, for consumers as well as our members who are serving them too.
Yeah, I mean, the changing funeral consumer impacts the entire profession. So every state is probably struggling with the same challenge. I mean, you want to stay relevant to your members,
Hmm.
right? So how do I do that? Because the landscape's constantly changing. So how
Yes.
would you say that your association's being able to stay relevant to your membership?
I think we're really looking to provide opportunities for. We have a women's conference, knowing how many women are going in to become funeral directors and how many women owners we have in Minnesota as well that have reached out and just want that support and that time and networking. We had our very first women's conference in November.
Hey,
Very
congratulations.
successful. Thank you. Yes, it
It's
was.
something like 75% of
Yeah.
the mortuary school graduates are female, I think.
Correct. Yes, absolutely. So, I think our association is doing a good job of recognizing like there's just different ways to support women that are in the profession and finding ways to do that. And this conference was just kind of that beginning moment to say, okay, we're here. We are listening to you, having presenters that speak on topics relevant to them. having opportunities to have conversations with vendors, kind of on a smaller level where they can have more meaningful conversations. And uh, that has been just, we've been blessed that we've had good support and good attendance, and really looking forward to this year too. And there's so many other states that are doing this. NFDA has their Professional Women's Conference. Funeral Women Lead are doing wonderful and amazing programming for women. So it's definitely a good direction to go to support. Hmm.
Yeah, I can see that. I know a lot of the values can be traced to, continuing education in their state, things along those lines, and being an advocate for, legal matters and all things at that level, because you're really looking out for your members in that way, or making sure that you
Absolutely.
have a way to fight or at least have a voice, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's part of, it's probably the most difficult job for associations, is how do you communicate that to your members? How do you express the complexity of these regulatory issues that come up, and how we are focused as a board or a legislative committee or a lobbyist or a general counsel to address those? We have a great team of people that do, but there's moments where we're deep into having conversations with a state agency, and you're like, how do I express this to my members other than just one-on-one conversations? And um but to, write a newsletter article, send out an email, it doesn't do
Yeah.
it justice, and not everyone's reading their emails either. So
Well, I'm glad we're not the only ones that experience
Mhm.
that.
Yeah,
But I think it's a good, good way for funeral homes in Minnesota, or really any state, to get involved with their association and learn about what's going on and ask questions. And that way they can at least be informed, and then also um, create maybe momentum towards things that impact the profession positively. Right, because
absolutely.
there's never a shortage of negative news when it comes to the funeral profession. When good stuff is happening,
Hmm.
we got to get that out there too. Like, the grief camp up in Minnesota, and whenever something good happens, we've got to share that.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, and that is truly one of the when I first started in 2002, the grief camp was just about to launch its very first camp. And it was in the stage of starting. And maybe I should roll back and explain the grief camp a little more too. That there was in 2001, the MFDA board of directors, a number of board members were like, hey, we should really find a way to be able to continue to support children after a funeral, and support families that are trying to support these children and through their grief. And they kind of put feelers out to other states to see if anyone else is doing. I mean, there's plenty of grief programs or grief camps around the country, but they partnered with a camp out of Iowa called Camp Amanda, and essentially made a franchise situation where we were able to go down. I was down with some other board member wives and did some training at that camp, and then brought the program essentially here to Minnesota. And we had our very first camp in January of 2003. And what was unique to our camp continues today, as it's its own organization and runs on its own, is that it's supported by funeral directors. It's was started by funeral directors. Funeral directors volunteer. Our partner organizations like your company that
Hmm.
help support and donate to and fundraising for camps, which
Yeah, we've been
includes
known to jump in a frozen lake on a time or
yes,
two.
yep, doing a
The
good
first
old
Saturday of every
jumping.
March, I believe.
Yes, yep, the first Saturday of every March. We are going to be once again on Lake Waconia in Minnesota, and get a big old hole in the ice, and teams of people jump in and raise money and survive
Oh, yes,
afterwards.
they do.
So yes, go into the bar and you warm up and you have a nice warm drink, and you're good. So, and
It's
you've
for
done a
medicinal purposes, though.
yeah, exactly, for sure.
Important.
Yes,
I'm
yes,
telling you,
and
those
jump
some good
and
experiences. We've been doing it,
yeah.
sponsoring that for a long time. It's fun.
Yes, you absolutely have. Which I mean, and you jumped before
Yes,
in
I
a
did, and
pink
once was
tutu.
plenty. Now I just
Uh-huh.
send my money,
Yeah. You
which is
you can
okay
do
too.
that as well. There's that option too. So, yes.
No, but I think it's a great story because, other associations could do something similar in their state because,
Mhm.
it's something that impacts children, and it's something that brings, um, positivity to our space, and it's
Absolutely.
something that it brings hope, and
Mhm.
I think that's all good stuff. So,
Yes, absolutely. And I
hats
try
off to you
even
for leading it.
well, there's such a great team of people that have been doing this and providing this for families, which is really great. And now that it has, grown into supporting families to get all together to attend the camp is has been really fun to watch that change and that trajectory that happened. So it's something even yesterday with the new students that I stressed to them if they can volunteer at camp and just have those moments of, if they're thinking about I want to be a funeral director and really have never had an experience working with a grieving family, being a volunteer at camp at Healing Hearts is it really fills that bucket for yourself. Being able to say you can support these families as well as just making sure that you have these opportunities to test out what it feels like to work and talk with families because it's probably if you think about volunteering other places. I think it's a unique opportunity to be able to have that moment and learn from yourself about how you can have those conversations about
Well,
death
yeah,
and
and
about
it's
supporting
just
grieving.
feels good to help other people, number
Yes.
1, but number 2, I think it's somewhat transformational
Mhm.
because, it really changes the way you think about others and maybe way you think about how you do your job
For sure.
even and how we care for people, and so, I haven't been to the camp personally, but I've heard stories, countless testimonies about, the transformations that happened because of camp, so it's awesome.
Mhm. Yeah,
And think
absolutely.
about it, it's something what year did you say it was, 2002 or 3 when you
2000, yep. Mhm.
so just think about if someone hadn't have taken a risk and had this idea to do something different, to do something new, that would never have taken root and never have would have had the opportunity it had to help so many people.
Absolutely. Yeah, the
So
hundreds of families that it's, supported and, continues to support. So it's I think the part when I started in 2002, once I heard there was this grief camp that was gonna be starting, it was probably the thing to me that I was like, "Please let me get this job with the funeral director." Like, I wanna be part of this organization as well
yeah,
and watch this happen, and it just was so amazing to me to meet these, board members that were just inspired to seek this out, to help
yeah.
support families. It was yeah, it's very, very special.
So you made me think about something there. So you're not a funeral director, a licensed funeral director, right?
Correct.
So y- I guess how did you get in the funeral profession in the first place? What's your background prior to being in the funeral space?
Yeah, background, went to school for public relations and political science. I had a lot of family members that worked in state and local government and thought that that might be my, I might work in the planning department for a city or something someday. But then had an opportunity to work for a chamber of commerce out of college and a convention and visitors bureau. And that's really where I recognized the support of organizations to support their members and what that meant. And from that point knew this was going to be the rest of my life, that I was going to work for a membership organization of some sort. Um, when I worked in Willmar, Minnesota, which is a
Yeah,
couple hours west of the cities, and so was looking to move to the Twin Cities and saw an ad in the paper. Back then, there was an ad in the paper.
that's the way
Um,
we did it.
it's why we did it, yep, and, sent in my resume. I might even faxed my resume if I think about it. So, got that sent in and really thought, "Okay." My experience with funerals had been, grandparents, or I had some friends from high school that died and, was never comfortable with it and really thought, "This is okay, we'll see how this goes." And then, like I said, interviewing and then finding out about the grief camp and really made me go, oh yeah, I think I'm interested in learning more about this profession and understanding who these people are. And I think as I say all the time, they can't get rid of me because I left and I came back and I'm so honored to work with funeral directors in the state. There's some, really long standing relationships and getting to know people that are supporting funeral directors that it's just part of my heart now. So,
I
yeah.
love it. Well, you have the number one skill for being an executive director or being in the funeral profession, and that's a big heart. So I can
Oh,
I
thanks.
can give you kudos for that.
I appreciate,
for sure.
yes.
Well, let's talk about a day in the life, I guess. What's it like to be an executive director? Tell us about what your day or your week looks like.
There's usually some good pre-scheduled meetings with board meetings and committee meetings. A lot of phone calls from members. I mean, it depends on the day that there can be with usually questions or issues, regulatory questions, maybe with our licensing department at the state and how we can help address that. I think it's the hardest when I hear from a member or have a conversation with a member about one topic, and then I'll ask them, "Are you experiencing this too?" And they're like, "Oh yeah," but they're just dealing with it on a daily basis and just really, trying to serve families, trying to run a business, and didn't really realize that as an association, we absolutely can step in and support and have further conversations to advance and get answers to what they need. If it's maybe something to do with how a policy is being interpreted for licensing, and that's something that we have the ability as an association to have those phone calls and conversations because they don't have
No,
time.
that's good. That's something that some members or potential members may not even realize. So
Correct, for
if
sure,
they have a
absolutely.
question, so not every funeral home has an attorney on staff or has
Right.
has someone who understands compliance.
Yes.
So is that your advice to them when something like that to call the association and or email them and
Absolutely.
ask for help?
Yes. Yep, absolutely. I mean, that's what we're here for, and even as I go out and have conversations with potential members, because not every member and not every funeral home in Minnesota is a member of our association, but I'm working on it and having those
They say not
conversations
yet anyway, not
and
yet.
traveling the state. Yep, and doing everything I can to make sure they know they're supported and um, when they bring up those moments of frustration, there's you can see relief where they're like, "Okay, this is great. I'm gonna have somebody guide through this." And it's not always an immediate process or immediate result. Some things can take time, especially when you're working with a government agency and regulation. So,
Yeah, well, can you think of any other issues that come up on occasion in your weekly, travels that you can help funeral homes out with?
workforce definitely is a
So
big part.
staffing, you mean?
Yes,
Okay.
staffing for sure. Our we created our association created a priority bill that we had um, all the legislative sessions mixed together. But I feel like it was in 2023 that it was introduced to create a new level of workforce called a transfer care specialist. In Minnesota, it's a bachelor's is required, a 4-year degree to be a licensed funeral director. So that isn't always an easy thing to be able to find, and just the time, and money that might mean to a future funeral director in our state. So the new level, the transfer care specialist, provided some relief to funeral homes to be able to hire and supervise people that have been trained to make removals on behalf of that funeral home. The bill did pass in like at 11:59 p.m. when the session
Oh,
ended at midnight in 2024, and it became law in July of 24. So it's
so that
and
is
right now. Oh, go
a
ahead,
new
Paul.
position for funeral homes to hire that it's not a full licensed funeral director and embalmer capacity, but
Correct.
it's a transfer specialist, right?
Correct. Yes. Yep.
Okay, that's interesting.
So they can make removals and provide a little bit of relief, especially for funeral homes that are in greater Minnesota where maybe there's one funeral director and if and it there's they want to go on vacation, and I know they a lot of times work with their friends in their community or surrounding funeral homes to be able to have vacation and have coverage for their funeral home. But this is kind of an extra way with being able to supervise and have some help that way. So
Yeah,
it's
what a good idea. I
been,
wonder if more and
yeah,
more states are doing that because I don't know. We don't in Texas. We have some different licenses, so you can be a licensed funeral director, but not a licensed embalmer. So that I think
okay.
that's one way they do it there. But I don't think we have a that designation that you're referencing.
Yeah, some states, I mean, I know Iowa has something similar. I know Wisconsin has an apprentice level. So there definitely is some ideas of how we can support without making huge regulatory changes, because I think in Minnesota we are very proud of that requirement for the 4-year degree. Our funeral directors are at a very high professional level, and but this just gives that opportunity to be able to provide them some support and relief. And what's interesting, and what had been waiting to see, is as funeral homes are training and hiring transfer care specialists, would this maybe um, provide that opportunity for somebody that's like, oh, I think I want to be a funeral director now? And I was able to see that this past fall at the U of M. There was a gentleman that's going through the program to get his 4-year degree.
Yeah,
Um,
so it's kind of a gateway job,
mhm.
right? So an opportunity, see how you like it, learn about it, and then go get your full-fledged degree and
Yes.
such.
Yep.
Oh,
Absolutely.
great idea.
Yeah.
All right, good deal. So since a podcast about leadership here, let's talk about leadership in the association. I don't know if you have any leadership qualities that stand out to you with the funeral homes you work with, or what comes to mind first when you hear the word leadership?
Well, we have a leadership academy that we've had. I cannot recall the year it started, but I know we just graduated our fifth class this past year. And what's been really exciting to see is those graduates, what's happened professionally for them. How we have currently, right now, our board of directors has 5 Leadership Academy graduates. Um, and our current president is a Leadership Academy graduate. And so I think it's been a great opportunity to have them push and advance themselves professionally as they go through that program, and then have an understanding of how the association is supporting them and it's supporting funeral profession, and that they can then join our board committees, other opportunities for leadership as well
So
to
what does
be.
that look like? I mean, are they covering some of the foundational kind of training, or what can one expect in that regard?
Yeah, they do. They definitely go through a lot of just personal, professional, or personal feelings about being a funeral director, and what that working with families. They cover a lot about having deeper conversations, or how to really guide families through a planning process, an arrangement. I think, and they learn from each other, and how to that education part of things and how important that is. Also being able to go out in their communities and talk about what they do at their
Yeah,
schools or
yeah.
Rotary
You think
Club
about it
or
though.
mhm,
Mortuary school is so compact. I mean, you can't
yeah,
learn everything, right?
correct.
So they can't teach. So people that just go straight through the U and they come out and they're licensed funeral director, they have a bachelor of science degree, right? But they will not have some of these other basics. There's just not enough time to teach everything. So that educational process just continues on like babies for your whole career.
Absolutely. Yes. And I think that that's where the association is, um, beyond the Leadership Academy, like other ways to utilize that and take advantage of people that have taken time to really seek those qualities and want to be active and participate. And um, but then also mindful of, as a leader and as they're in their career, and if there are things, the burnout side of things, or what can change for them as they are 5 years into their career, and how they're feeling about their job and how they're feeling about how they're taking care of themselves. That's another thing that the association just this year, actually in a week and a half, I think, is our very first wellness day retreat. It's going to be in a small format and it's only for funeral directors, about 20 people max, being facilitated by some really great grief counselors that work with physicians and work within hospice, and have those times to really make sure that they are taking care of themselves as well.
Yeah. Gosh, I'm
Hmm.
glad to hear you say that because that's so important. I mean, you think about the stress, the emotional stress, the physical stress that a funeral director goes through on a regular basis, and they just say, "Oh, it's just part of the job." But
Hmm.
at some point, you've got to unplug, you've got to recharge, you've got to take care of yourself so you can be able to take care of others, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where, even generationally, the generations that are maybe now looking at selling, and I mean, they've found ways to cope and work through and continue to have amazing businesses and serve their community. I think the younger generation that's coming in it wants that support. They want to know they don't want to go and get burnt out, but they
Yeah.
also are seeking opportunities to be able to be supported that way. So,
That's so good. So you said it just started. That's new.
yep, just brand new.
I love that.
I've in all the years of planning convention and picking out keynote speakers and having conversations about what topics we're going to cover, and it probably is most on my shoulders that I've been apprehensive about how do we approach this? How do we talk about our mental health and funeral directors taking and our members taking care of themselves? Um, and it I've never had a perfect thought in my mind of what that meant. And so finally there was a speaker that I knew and have had a relationship with, and at this past convention in 2025, I thought, okay, we're going to have her as a keynote, and we're going to have her bring her books that she has and have these conversations. And it went over the feedback we had and the response we had, and the conversation she had with attendees was remarkable. Like, I would have never guessed it, and then really made me go, "Okay, great job for dragging your feet on this one, Mickey," like, I really wish I would have addressed it sooner, and it wasn't that I didn't want to, it was just trying to find the right way to do it, and sometimes you just gotta jump in and
Yeah.
go for it.
I
So
was
and
going to say
that's
progress
yeah,
over perfection is what we believe
yeah.
in.
Yep. So exactly. And so we jumped in and went for it. And so her name is Kelly Grasklogs. She's a local in the Twin Cities, and so she and her she has a partner that she works with to facilitate this group. And so we're hoping truly, this will be the first one, and then hopefully we can continue to offer that. Even if it's a couple times a year or just based on need. If
Yeah.
this is something that lands well, as having this retreat for a day for people just to take that day for themselves and maybe learn some really great practices and maybe take some thought about what they're doing, and how they're taking care of themselves, I think is important.
Great job on putting that together for sure. Mickey, let's talk about membership and stuff like that in
Mhm.
Minnesota. And so what can you tell us about how that's going or any trends that you can share with the group that people need to be aware of?
I think there definitely is, as there's transition from ownership, opportunities where I can go out and have those conversations with potential members, and because I feel a lot of the time maybe they really don't recognize necessarily what we're doing, because we're still, no matter if they're a member or not, there's a lot of
Mhm.
things that still happen, especially legislatively and support regulatory wise. So when we have those conversations and they recognize, oh, this is something, and then you especially add in the part about networking, and that if you're a new owner and maybe don't know a lot of people, and not everybody that owns or is a funeral director in the state went to the U of M through the mortuary science program. So as they're coming in, we want to make sure that they know we're here for them and can help guide them and support them that way too.
I love the networking there because that leads to, your peers, uh, and sometimes study groups come out of that. Sometimes
Yes,
they travel together sometimes and they commiserate and they brainstorm about new ideas. And so all kinds of good stuff can come out of the networking.
for sure. Absolutely. And I feel convention has always been, 2002, Mickey would have told you convention was about the continuing ed. And that was important. That the social part of it was also important. The exhibit hall is important, and learning from, and having those relationships with the vendors that are there. But I think now convention is really that opportunity for people to get to know each other and have those networks, the networks that are already there, and then include new people that are in attendance. And that's where they're going to get the support they need is from each other. So, yep.
You're right. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, they used to go to see their casket vendor and and some of the other suppliers, which they still do, which is great. But I think nowadays they want more, right? So that's kind of the table stakes, if you will.
Yep.
And so it's almost like any membership that you're involved in. You want new value. You want something something more relevant, something better, and so you're always striving to increase that value, whatever it is. And so I
Yep.
love to hear some of the things you're talking about, just with improving the networking and having this attention to one's self as far as self care goes. I don't know what the right word
Mhm.
is, but
Yep.
those things are new, and I think
Mhm.
those things are important. So, anything else that come to mind? You can speak to that. Any stories that come to mind?
Um, I think something new that we're doing, um, that we really haven't we are very inclusive with events and things we do. We invite potential members, non-members to attend. Um, we of course give our members a discount for attending, but we are this year doing our very first members only event, to continue that networking and have our members feel that there's a value to being a member of the association and having that opportunity on a casual level. We're doing the U of M. Gophers football. We're going to do a tailgate that's only for
That'll
members, and
sell
then
out. I'm confident.
oh, for sure, right? Yes. Yep. We'll do a great job of tailgating and
So,
then, some good networking mixed in there too. But just to have those opportunities, not that we don't want potential members to attend an event like that, but we
mhm,
do want to make sure that our members recognize that we want to be able to support them and
yeah.
have that opportunity to be together.
One of the trends I was thinking about that I'm not sure where you stand on this is natural organic reduction. So I'd love
Mm,
to know your take on that. Is that something that your
yeah.
members are is bringing up, or
Yes, we know that Return Home, based out of Tacoma, is building their second location here in the South Metro, probably
okay?
close to Minneapolis
So
St.
it is
Paul
legal in
Airport.
Minnesota.
Correct? What was
It
that?
is
I'm sorry.
legal, and is it
Yes,
legal in
yep,
Minnesota?
and it is legal as well. We that became legal, I think, at the same time as transfer care specialists, like July
Okay,
2000. Or no, I apologize. It became legal this past year, July 2025.
I think that makes up
Um,
to around 14 states, I believe.
Yes, absolutely. And so I think when this came on the radar, at least to our association and our members, I attended I think it was the very first Terracon that was put together out in Tacoma. I just attended virtually. And then last year I was able to attend with one of our board members, just to learn more about it. We're fortunate that one of the employees of Return Home lives in Minnesota and is based out of Minnesota. And she really provides us great education for our members because we want to make sure everybody understands what this means and how, when a family approaches them, what do they do next, right? Because we don't have a facility here yet, but it's still an option. Absolutely. So I feel like um, I haven't asked directly all of our members how they feel. I'm sure there's differing opinions on how they feel, if this is gonna be a long-term thing or it's going to be a short-term thing. Um, to me, it's consumers want it. You better know. The best thing you could do is educate yourself, and as an association, we continue to try to make sure we can do that and make sure our members know that we're here to have resources for them to learn about it.
Well, I hope we learned our lesson from the cremation
Mm,
shift that started in the, I don't know, 90s, where, we didn't handle that very well as a profession, I would say. I mean, we tried not to talk about it, we tried not to bring it up, we, raised the price on it, and we just did a lot of things that I'm hoping we don't do with this trend. I'm
I
still trying to
agree.
formulate my opinion on it. I think it's interesting,
Mhm,
but whether I agree or not, it doesn't really matter. It's
mhm.
an option for families,
Yep.
and some of the research I'm hearing is that families may not want burial and they may not want cremation, but they really don't have another option. So now, if they have another option, they might make that decision. So I don't
Mhm.
know.
Yep. Absolutely.
So, and when it comes to a changing funeral consumer, they want choices and they want value and they want all the things that they should have.
Mhm.
So it'll be interesting
Absolutely.
to see how this plays out. I think it's in the
Yes.
early stages, but I know more people are talking about it because I get asked about it on a regular basis.
Yes. Absolutely. That's we're fortunate. The return home employee is Mandy Stafford, and she will reach out to me and ask questions about. She has somebody that because she gets people that call her from all over the country, and want to pre-plan for be terminated. So it's I think as she has those conversations and she wants to make sure that funeral homes can still guide them through that process too. I don't believe that the opinion is like this is our market share and we're going to focus on these families and we're going to leave the funeral director out because that has not been my impression at all with all of the termination companies that I've met. So yeah.
Hey, and Minnesota's farming country, right? There's a lot of
Yep.
farmers up there. They're going to connect with that whole idea
Yes, for
much more
sure.
than they might some of the other alternatives. So
Yep. Yep, absolutely.
who knows where it might be in 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, good deal. Well, I just thought about that because
Yeah.
it came to mind with trends in funeral service. And I know we touched on succession planning. I know we touched on changing funeral consumer. Um, I guess as far as your membership goes, are you hearing other trends in regards to technology or anything else that's coming up that you guys are sensitive to?
Uh, probably not as much technology wise, I think everyone's using AI in their own way, right? I
Hmm.
think I mean in my job and my coworkers that there's really a value to using it if you know how to use it and um the way you're using it, and I'm sure from what I hear and learn how that works for funeral directors as well, um, with obituary writing and different options to be able to find next of kin, and I mean, I've heard a lot of different stories. Mhm.
Yeah, I've heard some too. And I've read a book on this, and they said basically there's three types of people when it comes to AI. There are the people that are going to be replaced by AI. There's
Mm,
the people that are going to be manipulated by AI or controlled. And then thirdly, there are the people that will be enhanced by AI. In other words, they'll use that as a tool to improve their life, their job, or
mhm.
what their hobbies, whatever it is. So
Mhm.
I'm choosing to be in the third category there,
Me too.
and it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. I think there's more questions than answers in that regard, but I still think there's lots of opportunity in the funeral space for AI solutions when it comes to being efficient in the back room. With some of the because we're seeing funeral homes enter information 8 and 9, 10 different times the same information, and there's no really need to do that
Right.
nowadays. That's just an easy example.
Right. Absolutely.
So we'll see where it goes.
Mhm. I think another, technology example with our association that what kinda going back to the funeral educating the funeral consumer, um, is that we have been focused on we have a PR task force. We did our first, consumer video, it's about a minute long, just really drawing out questions that consumers have, and then kind of guiding them to the answers of that if they want to have conversations and have that healing and meaningful funeral, whatever it may look like. That talking to any of our member funeral homes can guide you through that process.
Oh, I didn't even know
And
that. That's good. What a
yeah,
good
yep,
idea.
yeah. So we've been able to use things that you're already doing with your customers, funeral directors life customers with testimonials or just that footage and without having to film anything new. Rob and his team have done a great job of putting that together, and we look forward to doing some additional videos, consumer videos this year, some
Yeah.
shorter ones that the time span or the the amount of time that I think is that you can capture someone's attention and how to keep that in a short video and answering a quick question maybe they had about not realizing if your loved one wants to be cremated that you can still have a visitation. Some little things like that to help educate the consumers, educate families, and then guide them to our members that can help them through
Yeah.
that.
Shout out to Rob Davidson and the AV
Yeah.
team. That's really good because,
That
we're always trying to improve our body of knowledge. And we learned this from Dr. Wolfeld. And if we don't stick up for why funerals matter, who's going to, right?
absolutely.
This
Yep.
is on us to educate the general public and ourselves sometimes because we might forget why we have symbols and why we have ritual and ceremony and so it's good to remind all of us how important those things are.
Yes, absolutely.
I love that. All right, well, good deal. Well, let's move it into a wrap up time here, and Let's talk about advice here. I'd love to know if you're going to give, if you have some advice you'd like to give to a funeral home owner um, who know they should be planning ahead. What kind of advice would you give them?
To really take that time earlier. Um, I know there's many of our members, some that have, have been longtime friends now since the time that I've been around, and watching them step into those moments of deciding to retire and sell their business and what that looks like. And I think the biggest thing is just to start earlier probably than you think. Um, just to really understand what your business is, to be able to maybe mentor somebody within your own funeral home if you have staff that might be interested, if there isn't that legacy component with a family member, and um, that the value of that sooner than later is it'll pay out. Hmm.
Yeah, that's good advice. And what I was thinking about is sometimes if a funeral home owner sells their business, that doesn't necessarily mean they have to leave the business. And
Absolutely.
I've seen a lot of success stories where they sold their business or even part of their business,
Hmm.
because you can sell part of your business too,
Hmm.
and you don't have to sell the
Yep.
entire thing and walk away and move to Florida. But you could do that.
Hmm.
But there's also options to stay involved, or partial sales over time, things along those lines. So I think your advice of starting earlier than you think is really good advice. All right, I know that we're hopeful about the funeral profession and the future of the funeral profession. I know you are as well. So from where you sit, is there anything that stands out to you most in that regard? What gives you the most hope about the future for the funeral profession?
Yeah, our current board of directors. There's our board president, Jordan McCreevy Seitz. I met him when he was 10, and same with Tyler Hoff. He was probably similar age when I first met him, and it's so interesting to me to see the younger generation and these young owners that are coming in, and them realizing being part of our board and having that voice, being on our board is really refreshing to see. I mean, I think the average age of my board right now is probably mid-30s. I mean, I could probably be everyone's mom, honestly. So it's
Well, you're sounding like a proud mom right
yeah,
now. That's
I
good.
am a very proud. I am. It's truly like just to see, like I shared before from our leadership academy, to see young people that are like, yes, I would love to be on the board and serve and have these conversations and know what's going on. I mean, I had a phone call today with a member who is more than likely going to step into a director position after convention when some of our terms end. And I told him, I'm like, you're going to know more than you ever even realized. And once again, it goes back to, how do I communicate this to everybody, right? There's sometimes just not the easiest way, but I'm like, as a business owner, you're going to feel like you know where to go if you have an issue. You're going to feel, understand what's happening and help be part of those decisions and be part of that conversation, which is so important. So,
Yeah, that's a good one. That makes me think about the next generation too, and they're great. I mean, so many they're great at their jobs. They love helping other people. They work hard.
mhm,
They're super creative, and so when you think about all that together, what's not to be hopeful about, right? I mean, it's pretty
absolutely.
exciting.
Yes. Yes.
All right, well,
Very.
Mickey, it's great to see you, and thank you for such an insightful time today. Thank you for joining us. More importantly, thank you for the good work that you're doing on behalf of the independent funeral homeowner and all of your membership at large. So keep up the great work.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Paul. I appreciate you.
Thanks for joining us on Director's Playbook. If today's conversation was helpful to you, feel free to like and subscribe. Also, you can share any feedback you have at the Director's Playbook at funeraldirectorslife.com. Until next time, take care, everybody.